Hello once again, Monster Hobbies Model Car Garage Mechanics. Welcome back to a continuation video of the thrill threads for the small scale group build hosted by the Scale Model Car Guy and Dan at 60s Customs. Dan the man. So today what I want to do with this kit is get into building the frame and the running gear, which would also include our wheels and tires. And I do have a bit of an issue because, as you know, I'm building a fresh out of the box kit as well as restoring an old one from my childhood. And the downside is the old one from the childhood has a broken frame. So, and suspension parts as well. So without further ado, let's see if I can get this all together and figured out. Here we have the parts trees that include our frame, our rear axle, our tires, our front axle, and our wheels. And here you can see we've got the 5-spoke mag wheels, as well as these hubcaps, which will go into the tire later on. So for now, what we will be focusing on is the frame and the running gear parts, and then we'll come back to our wheels in a moment. Now for the old model, unfortunately my frame has all broken up into 4 pieces, and the rear axle, the end broke off here, and I was able to get the tire out of the end there, which was nice. And our front axle, one side of it is broken into the wheel, and that's going to be a pain to try to remove. But another thing that I noticed with this is the body on the restoration kit has the wide fenders in the back, but it's got the narrow tires here. So I will use these old wide tires from the new kit in order to correct this. But sadly, I've got to try to get this one wheel off and hopefully not break the rear axle even more. So this will be quite the challenge to get this back together. The first thing I'm going to do is take my cutters here and just clip the frame off of the parts tray, and that would allow me to start cleaning this up, getting rid of any flash, and perfecting it out. I think I'll also take the opportunity to cut the rear axle off and get that ready. There we go. Now we got 2 of it. I'll leave the front axle for now, but this is how it will end up. There's some notches in the axle which go into those holes, and then this will go up into the front of the engine, and the engine will mount on these 2 pieces sticking out. Now turning this over, we can see a lot of mold marks and other kinds of things up in the frame, so I'm going to get rid of those by using my sanding block and just sanding them out. Should smooth this up and make it look quite nice, and hopefully help in the fit and finish of the model. The other thing I will do is use my number 11 hobby blade and just go along the edges here and try to get rid of any of the seam lines from the molding process and smooth it out. Now I have the frame cleaned up, and I used a little 1200 grit sandpaper just to smooth this up and give a little bit of a bite for the paint that's coming up on this to get a hold of. Now one thing that I noticed is there was a bit of a seam line that was like a V in here, so I filed that flat in order to make it look correct. And overall, I think this does look quite a bit better than what we started with. Next up, we want to clean our rear axle, and in order to do that, I've noticed that there are mold marks there, and on the edges out here. There's also flash and a seam line that runs like this across, and across here and down and out the torque tube. So you want to get rid of that with your number 11 hobby blade. There was a spot here where it was connected to the parts tree, which I filed and rounded down. And basically you want to scrape that seam line down and then feel it with your thumb to find out where it is. Now right in here, it's crucial to get these ends perfectly round. There's a little bit of a flare out on the top here, and that is to lock the wheel nut in place once you push these on. But you want to get rid of the seam line, otherwise your wheel won't rotate. It'll drag up and be caught right in there. Here's the rear axle all cleaned up, and there's actually a couple of notches in here. So the first two that are closest to the center are actually where it mounts to on the frame. And then these notches on the end, well, they're designed for these fenders. You can see those two little posts right there. So these would drop right into that notch and give you the big fenders on the end of the axle and enough room to put your wheel inside as well. Now, I wish I knew that when I was younger. Anyway, I took the mold marks off of here on the top surfaces, and then I had to make sure these little U-shapes were open more. And I was able to get that rear axle down nice and tight into the edges. You can't even see where the gap is up in here. It's interesting that the rear axle is just connected straight onto the frame, so I guess there's no springing in the back, which would make this a pretty hard ride in the real world. But overall, it does look pretty good. Now, like it says in the instructions, before you push on those wheel caps, make sure to put a little bit of graphite or Vaseline or something on there so that there's something inside the wheels for them to rotate on, you know, to act as a little bit of grease inside. Otherwise, they'll lock onto the axle. Now, before we get into reconstructing the broken frame, I thought I'd look at these little broken pieces for our rebuild. And as you can see, the front bit of the axle is broken off, and this was stuck in the wheel. But off screen, I was able to break it out. Unfortunately, though, that center peg is still in there. That's this. So I'm not too sure what I'm going to be doing on the front wheels. And same for the back. I tried to get that one out, and I snapped it off. And that's the square mount right in there, where those little notches were for the rear fenders to mount on. So, again, I'm not too sure. But this wheel is actually the front wheel, and if we look at the newer kit, you can see the bigger rear tires that were supposed to go on there are quite a lot bigger. This is for the fender rod, which I've ended up turning this one into. So this one is for the narrow tire, is for the one without any fenders on it, which would be the car on the instructions that I want to build, you know, with the new kit. But for the reconstruction, I'm going to have a really interesting time trying to get these wheels on here. But what I think I'll do is I'll try to remove the seam lines off of the front axle as best I can, and then glue this little piece back onto here. I wanted to pin it, but I accidentally, getting this off, cracked it along here where the disc is, and there. So if I try to pin it, I'm going to have a really tiny area to go drill into, and I might crack that little rotor disc off. So, I don't know. Well, I guess it's a backstop disc, but still, it's going to be tricky. Now, for the reconstruction, you can see that a lot of this is broken apart. Now, what I was thinking is to take the new frame from the new kit, trace it onto a piece of paper, just to give me a bit of a jig, so that I can align the broken one to it. And the other thing I'm thinking of is, on these frames, I'll take my little drill here and pin it with this wire. So what I would do is, let's take this piece here, figure out where it's supposed to attach. And I'm going to take my pencil. Oh, this could be difficult. Take my pencil and draw a line like that, and carefully trying to hold this frame together somehow. Won't be easy. Maybe some Scotch tape or something. But I'll draw a line across both points and then drill down, down this way, there and there, just so that they align along that line. So there'd be one or two holes, and then a little section of this wire, and then it'll go in wire to wire, you know, through the hole, and a lot of glue, and hope these two fuse together. And then with the pattern, or the tracing, I can bend this a little bit until it gets to where it needs to, because as you see, this frame is tapered in the front. Now originally I was going to try to cut a new frame out of evergreen styrene or whatever, but there's so many curves and complications. Like, it bows out this way and it comes in this way and all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to try my best to reconstruct this, and I hope it works. The other thing is the motor mounts, they snapped off, but they are at the very bottom of this edge. So with little evergreen rectangles, I should be able to just glue it. The engine will be slightly lower in this frame, but overall, it'll hold the motor in place. Now that the frame and rear axle seem to fit together really nicely, I can clip off the front axle and try to clean it all up and get it into these little points right in here. So I've used a bit of the masking tape here, and it seems to be holding it in where I need it. Let's just put a finger behind there and try to draw my line. Okay, there it is. So now I have a bit of a reference point to drill in one direction, turn around and drill in the other direction, and then that pin should line it all up. So I've drilled the holes along the line, and I don't know if you can see that. Oh yeah, you can see it. There's little holes there into the frame. Now what I will need to do is take a little chunk of this wire, and let's hope this all works out. Let's see, just maybe that's too long. I don't know. Did I grab it? Here we go. Chasing the dream. Okay. Let's see. Where's the hole? Well, the little piece is too long, as you can see. So, let's slip that in as far down as I can get it. Try this. Okay. Ooh. A little bit off. But not too bad. At least it'll have some strength here. Another thing I'm thinking of doing is getting a very thin piece of styrene plastic, and I'll glue these ends together, you know, get this into the shape that it needs to be, and then I'll take this styrene strip and cut a little piece, probably on the inside, I don't know, or both, and then glue the strip along here and along, well, here to here, because there's a little notch thing there, and that will cover the crack and strengthen it up in here and here in order to pretty much restore its original strength as best we can get it. But overall, I think that is the way to go. So now I have my original frame all pinned up everywhere except for this one little spot right here, because I don't think there's enough room to actually have a pin go in there. However, what I'm hoping for is I've cleaned up that front axle, get all the contact points back, and I'm hoping that, see, it fits in these notches here. And of course, that just had to slip off the wire, didn't it? Okay, hang on. Get this back in here. Where are you? Right there. Okay, so I'll have to rotate these into position, But I'm hoping that if I glue the axle into the two notches, that would provide enough support there for this to glue to there, you know, as one big solid streak with my glue brush, and hope that that front axle holds it together up front there, makes it nice and tight. Now, another thought that I had, instead of tracing the new frame onto a piece of paper, I could actually use my pegs, clothes pegs, and just put the new frame underneath and then position the old frame to line up right over top of the new frame, and use the clothes pegs down here, you know, where it's not broken, just to hold the alignment together while I do that. Now, this is the styrene sheet that I was thinking of gluing along the sides here once this is all together, so it will be thin enough to go up into the body, and hopefully like it's paper thin, maybe even less than paper. So hopefully this will be enough just to act as a support on either side of that frame. We'll see what happens. Well, I think I got this pretty well. I used that thin styrene and I cut little strips and I glued them up to the side of the frame. As you can see now, I will have to file this into shape just to make this all match the height of the frame rails. Glued on that front axle. Now it does look deceiving because that one piece is still off. It's down here somewhere. Right there, so I got to be careful on how I glue it back together. But take a look at this. Here's the new frame. And now I can lay this over top. And look at that, I got it right into shape. There. Got it right into shape pretty well. If I turn it over, you can see how it all lines up perfectly. If I can align it. Anyway. There it is. Oh, I know why, because it's sort of, the little blades are too high, the little plastic sheet I put in. There we go. See how nicely that lines up with the new frame? So we are pretty much ready, and it's nice that I was actually able to get the original frame back into shape, because I was thinking I might have to throw it all away. So there you go, with a little bit of ingenuity and some wires and everything, you too could fix a broken frame. So there it is, clean it all up, and we'll take a look at how it is. Oh, one other thing I thought of doing. For the axle here, I'll take the new one for length, and I think I can get some plastic tubes, some evergreen, onto the end here, just to make the broken old axle the same length as the new one. And then, I don't know, I could put discs on the end of it too, and flat glue the wheels directly to the axle, sort of like that, with the improvements, of course. So the wheels on the old one will not turn on the axles, but that's okay, just as long as it is on 4 wheels. So here I have the broken piece glued back onto the front axle, and again it's kind of hard to tell because this long stem is sticking out on this side, but over here there's nothing because it's stuck in that other wheel. I did reinforce these as shown before. Now I've sanded them down and made them fit the contour of the rail better. And there is one thing I will show you, and that's how this frame actually goes in the car. And this is how I busted the frame up. So I will show with the body here. Now this is, of course, the old body. Now, what I noticed with the new frame, well, actually with any frame, is in the back it seems to go down okay, but then right in here it's all tight. And the reason why I broke the frame is I was trying to push it down here because this is channeled over the frame rails, but that's the wrong way to do it. So here's how to actually do it. You need to take your frame at the back here and slide it in, and you see these 2 little pins that are there? They're going to click once it gets out here. So just be careful, be careful, be careful, and click. There you go. Now it lines it up, and it is channeled on those frame rails nicely. And that was a problem. If you try to push it in this way, or like try to pinch it and push it in, you will snap that frame. And that's why this one is now being reconstructed, because that's exactly what happened. It snapped. So be careful there. One thing that I really want to do on the reconstructed car is to use this Model A radiator, which is really a cool piece. Now the other radiator, of course, is the slope back one, and that is the 34 Ford radiator, which is right there. But like I say, you've got a choice between that one and the old Model A style. So the newer kit, of course, is going to have the slope radiator, but the old one, I'm going to use the Model A one. And what I noticed on the back is there's a huge mold mark there and a number at the top. So with your number 16 hobby blade, you should be able to scrape it all out of there and make it look as nice as this. So there's a little notch at the front of the frame, and it slopes down in the front too. And I noticed that the 29 radiator has the slope to it, and that little bit, the little pin at the bottom, makes it sit up and down, vertical, whereas the slope back grill has a little notch in it for the pin, and that will go right there, and that helps it to slope backward as it would on the 34. Now one thing I noticed is the motor mounts, and what I was thinking is, instead of cutting two little squares and then trying to align them and glue them in, you know, so one isn't further down or up or whatever, I think I'll just get a strip of styrene, the same thickness as this, go right across. Then it's going to be parallel with that. And then once it's all dry, I'll measure out here to here and cut that bar, cut out a center section so the oil pan can drop down. And then that way it's nice and equal and level and parallel to everything else that's going on in the frame. Here we have it so far with the engine mount bracket right in there. Now I will be cutting the edges off here later on once it's all glued up and hardened, and then I'll cut where it needs to be out of the center section in order to make this look right. Now you may have noticed that I glued on that Model A radiator. I think this is actually from a 31 because it's really square cut in here, whereas the 29 rolled over at the top and all that sort of thing. So this is either a 30 or a 31. So, but still, it's pretty cool. I got it glued on there, nice and vertical, as it should be. And I have the body here. This is, of course, the reproduction one, or the restoration one. Reproduction. So I'm not going to try to push this in on the frame rails. So I'll just sort of do a little mini version for right now. But it will look pretty cool. It's looking pretty cool as it is. One thing I'm thinking of is I'm going to use these matching front fenders. Now I did lose one from the original kit, but the newer kit, of course, has extra. So these just slip on the front axle and glue up tight against the little edge of the backstop for the wheel. Now I've got to be really careful on this axle, of course, because that's the one that broke in two places. But at any rate, I'll give it a try. Something like that. And then get those skinny little tires up at the front. And it should look right. Another thing I'm thinking of is there's the mag wheels there, and they only give you a set of two for the rear. But if I use the old ones, I could have mag wheels all the way around on this thing, which would be quite the cool looking thing. Make it look more like a Hot Wheel or something, instead of the standard wheel that came with it, or the set of two different hubcaps like that. One's like this one, the other's got a knockoffs. So again, really neat stuff. I'm enjoying building this. Even the restoration is coming out nice. Here we have the frame after I've taken our motor mount bar and cut it up, and you can see just how nice this is. If you want to see how it compares to the new frame, There you go. So I did get it quite right. Same thickness and same width. So everything is turning out fine. Now remember with the rear axle I said I was going to add some rod to it? Well, I've decided on using some evergreen scale styrene strip, and I used the 1/8 diameter rod, and I also used some plastic from here, and I punched some holes in it with my dad's hole punch set. Here we have the results of that effort, and you can see how nice this is now. It's got the extensions going out of the axle, and that basically brings it up to the same length as the new axle, or the untouched kit axle. However, this one is a little bit longer, so those rear tires will stick out a bit further, and you can see the discs on the back are quite larger, but that will give ample room for the rear wheels to be glued onto this rear axle. Now as for the wheels and tires, I was experimenting with my hobby knife and trying to get the hubcaps out, as well as a little retainer in the back, because I wanted to use that again for the rear wheels. But this plastic is so brittle that, as you can see, I was trying to take out the hubcap, and I managed to get one out almost undamaged. I could have reconstructed this inside one of the wheels and been fine, but then when I went to get the second one out, it just chipped and exploded. A piece almost took me out in my eye. It did bounce underneath my eyelid, and that was kind of painful. But with these two wheels, I was able to salvage them. So I took the center line out of the tread, and I also took the caps and glued them back in here. I got rid of the flash around the edges. And what I'm thinking is actually taking these wheels and gluing them directly onto the axle, and then painting the whole thing semi-gloss black. And I think that would save me quite a bit of time and figuring out and whatnot. Just paint everything here on the frame and the radiator semi-gloss black, and then come in with the Molotow chrome pen around the edge of the radiator. Now one thing I'm going to have to do is, the new axle has those notches in there which the fenders are supposed to mount onto, but my reconstructed axle here is now using that 1/8 rod, and what I'll need to do is get rid of those little square pegs in here and round it out more like in the back, so that this axle will fit into the body and not have to be notched to fit those square pegs. So I was able to use this round file in here and file it down until the loops matched each other, and here is the frame in position, and that rear axle now fits in there perfectly. The only thing that seems kind of odd is that it's sticking way into the fender arches, but that's okay, because if we look at the big wheels, they are actually countersunk, so they should be able to pop in there, glue on, and have a bit of this collar covering up part of that axle. So all should be well. The only slight issue I might have here is I think that the front of the frame twisted over this way as I was pushing it into the body. So I don't know. It's so hard because it's snapped in so many places in here that snaking in the front is bound to happen. So here I've glued the one wheel onto that axle, and I've also glued in the rear axle down below, and I just wanted to show you this because that's the little pin end that survived. And here's one of the wheels. So basically this would push on, you put a little bit of grease on that pin, and then there it is, the one and only functioning wheel. And what I would suggest if you're going to do this is just heat up the tip of your hobby knife and maybe make a little squish, mushroom this head out a little bit, maybe even a metal rod, heat that up and push it in, because this still has a tendency to want to slip off. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue the wheel in place, make it solid like the other side, and but for now I just wanted to show you that that's how you make the wheels function on the ones that aren't broken. So here we have a mock-up with the engine just sitting loose in the frame, because I still got to paint everything in here. But The motor mounts line up with the ones I put on for the frame, as does the torque tube sitting out the back onto the transmission. The only issue is the transmission still needs that gear shift lever, and I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to feed this in, because it's got to go through that hole and drop down. I think what I might try to do is take the file, I don't know how well this is going to work, but try to file a bit of the thickness out of here and here in order to make that frame pop in a little bit better without it twisting in the front or something weird, because I really think it's binding up against the channeling in here. So that's not good. Here we have the frame for our 34 Ford, and this is all painted with 2 coats of trim-clad semi-gloss black. So what I do is I spray on a coat first, and then I let it set for 15 minutes. This is what's known as the paint flash time, and that's when the first coat is going to be tacky enough and settled enough so it won't move when you spray the second coat on the top. Right now we have to wait for this all to really dry, a period of at least 24 hours. But overall you can see just how much nicer this looks with that spray on there. Actually, it looks quite good. You really can't tell where I had to fix it up or anything. Really nice. And I love that Model A radiator. It looks cool. Could even put a Model A body on here if I want. So again, nice stuff you can do with a bit of paint. Here we have the glued up frame, and you can see that it's very simplistic. There's really only 3 pieces: the frame, the rear axle, and the front axle. But actually, depending on how you want to build this, there is a 4th piece, and that is this little push bar, and that glues right in between these 2 little blades. So, but in our instructions, if I just bring them over here, you can see that it doesn't show that little push bar thing in the back, unless you're looking at the other models in the set. So there it is there for the 2 different types of dragsters and roadsters. So that piece is used. I'm just not using it in this build. Now, we got our little engine as well. You can see the chrome in the front and the little holes under the exhaust and our chrome plated shifter. So once I paint the frame and that's all dry, the engine will just go in like so. Of course, I'll connect this in a bit better, but there it is. Popping off the back of the torque tube. All right, just hold it steady, Trev. All right, so there it is. Oops, dropped it again. But yeah, basically that is what we have. And then that 34 Ford radiator would be glued in the front. Now, before I paint the new frame, I've masked off the little ends of the axles, and that's so that I don't get any paint on them when I spray this. And that will help with those wheel retainers to make them spin on the ends of the wheels instead of being jammed up with paint. Here we have our frame after I applied 2 coats of trim-clad semi-gloss black. You can see just how nice this looks. Now what I'll do is remove these hanging wire brackets that I made, as well as the tape off the ends of our axles, and that'll give the axles a nice clean surface for the retainers to rotate around on. And we'll also scrape the paint off of the engine mounting points so that once our engine gets in there, it'll be nice and solid. The next step in finalizing the build for the chassis and running gear is, of course, selecting our tires and our hubcaps. Now here you can see quite a few different ones. We have 2 of the 5-spoke mag wheels, and then we've got 2 different sets of hubcaps. So we've got this set that's here and here, and then the set in the middle. Now the set in the middle has knockoffs right there, whereas the other one has smooth caps, which sort of look like the car on the box top. Here's the box top for reference. Actually, these are more like stock 34 Ford wheels that are shown here, whereas if we look at these hubcaps, they really don't look like that at all. but with a little bit of paint and work could sort of make them look like that. But I do believe that those are these, because you got the smooth cap in the center and then the little divot holes around the outside. There are mold marks in here which would need to be removed, and the worst are actually on the knockoffs because they're right in this ring and between the knockoffs, so really hard to get in there. For tire combinations, we have 4 little skinny ones, as well as these 2 mega big slicks in the back. Now the 2 little ones would of course be like for a fenderless rod, and those would be basically stock style tires. And then the bigger ones are for our drag racing cars, which would be these tires right here. And those are the same ones that go into the fenders for our fender rod. Now, since I'm going to be building the on-the-box hot rod, it shows these wheel covers going on here, as well as the tire and the wheel hubs. So I'm going to need these wheels in here, and of course these hubs down here, and I'll save these bigger wheels for a different project. Now what's interesting to me is that they're showing these wheels with the knockoffs on them, which are basically these ones right here. But if we look at the box art itself, those wheels look like stock 34 Ford wheels, which to me actually look like this hubcap here. So I think I might use this hubcap, paint the center chrome with the Molotow pen, and the outside in the body color, which in this case of the box art is that green. And then I think it should be right, because you don't really see these knockoff things on there. That's just the stock Ford hubcap on there. So I think that's what I'm going to do. So again, we've got our wheels here. Oh, let's just wind that back. We've got our wheels here, and then the wheel retainers, and then I'll use these hubcaps over here. Now the next step in completing our frame and running gear for our Thrill Threads restoration is of course our wheels and tires. Now the wheels are actually molded inside the tires, so that's not a problem. Just need those wheel backs in there. But the nice part is you can dress up these wheels any way you want with various hubcaps. So originally I had this combination with the mag wheel at the back and the hubcap in the front. Now, like I was saying before, I tried to get these out and broke them because that plastic is brittle. But in the newer Thrill Threads kit, I have these mag wheels here. And from before, I actually have these sets of wheels. So these are the knockoffs, and I do have a complete set here. And then this is that hubcap that I used here, but because I couldn't get this out, these are just extras, and I only have 2 again, so that gives that hubcap in the back or front and a different wheel somewhere else. Now from the Jumping Jeans kit, I have these steel wheels, but these ones are going to be for the Jumping Jean build. I also have these hubcaps. I don't know where number 4 went to, but these are Baby Moons. And if we just drop them into that tire again, you can see how cool that actually looks. But there's our smooth wheel back in behind, and then the Baby Moon in the front. Now with the other wheels, or hubcaps, you can see there's one combination there. There's another variation, I guess, here. I could also paint that sort of outer bit in a body color and leave the center cap chrome, or aluminum in this case. But I think I might be using the knockoffs, which are quite nice. Now, I do have the more updated Lindberg double kits, and that was the show rods. So these did come in chrome. So there's the ones from the Lucky Bucket. Now you can see the difference. Oops. The red compared to the chrome. Which do you prefer? Let me know in the comments down below. And then we've got my aluminum painted, or maybe even silver painted hubcaps versus the chrome ones. The chrome ones, of course, I think would look better. I could use the Molotow pen on these just to dress them up. And that is from the Lucky Bucket kit. Now, also in that other kit is the Super Roadster, and these are a whole bunch of other hubcaps that I could add on. I like these ones. They're kind of like, make me think of Dodge Darts of the 70s, but I think they're supposed to be Cadillac sombrero caps. And then we've got these ones, which are neat little cones. I've seen these on quite a lot of cars. Been watching Happy Days recently, and they're on there. Then, I guess these are Baby Moon hubcaps. Or maybe they're supposed to go on this way. Not too sure. That's actually interesting. Would it be... Yeah, they go on like that. Dished in. That's cool. And then we have these steelies with the holes in them. So there's actually quite a, like 4 or 3 wheel choices with that Super Roadster kit. So that'll be a fun one to build in the future, of course. Both the Lucky Bucket and the Super Roadster. But I don't know, which ones would you choose? It's quite a big choice, isn't it? And the other thing is, if I got another Super Roadster, I could have these on all 4 wheels. Same with another what one is that? The Jumpin' Jeans. No, this is Thrill Threads. Oh, I'm getting confused. But if I had another Thrill Threads, I could have 4 mag wheels all the way around. But like I say, I think for this build, I'm going to use these knockoff ones. And the reason for that is because I could use these little moon caps, baby moon caps, but the wheels that I have on that frame that I painted, I dug the hubcaps out of the wheels, and there's a lot of glue damage in behind. So something like this would only show the glue damage, you know, up in the corners or whatever. These ones, of course, are going to be for the, you know, Thrill Threads car. Or whatever, the other one. Now, I could do a combination like this. The baby moons and then those caps. So the baby moon's up front, but again, like I said, the glue damage. So these ones are the logical choice to cover up all the glue damage and anything else. So I will use these on the Thrill Threads. And for the resto rod, like I said before, I am going to use these bigger tires in the back and the smaller ones up front. Smaller ones, of course, being from the original kit, and these ones to replace the ones that should have been on my original kit. Here we have our frame for the restoration model. This is now all complete, although I did have quite a bit of grief with this. First off, remember how the front axle was weak? Well, I cracked the wheel off of here, and I had to pin it. So I pinned it and I crazy glued it into position. So hopefully that'll last. Then I got the wheels in the tires, as you can see. And I'd still have to put the little dots in there, I guess. And then I went to glue on the rear wheels and I blew into the little hole in behind, and it squirted all the liquid glue out everywhere, all over the tires. So I had to paint one of those with gloss black paint, this one, just to patch it up. And then I used my Molotow chrome pen onto each of the knockoffs and then painted the radiator. The knockoffs are fine, but the radiator all wrinkled up, and I think that's because the semi-gloss black paint was just painted on like a day ago, and I think the alcohol from the chrome pen weakened it somehow, and it wrinkled. So it sort of looks like some of the Johann chrome that I had in the past. Oh, and the engine, I had to break off the headers because it wasn't sitting right. And of course, breaking off meant snapping one of them. So it's all snapped right along there. But overall, though, I did manage to get it in. You can see the tricarbs are straight up and down from behind the radiator. You know, it's built correctly, but I just had some issues with paint and everything. And that was not fun. Here's our painted frame, and I've removed the tape from the ends of the spindles. You can see just how clean they are. I also scraped the paint off of the engine mounts as well as here on the torque tube, just on the very end. So that's where it's going to meet the transmission. So when I get a bit of glue here, I can slip the motor in place. glue it right on, and it should look pretty good. Now the other thing that I've just done for now is taken the tires and I've scraped out the center on the front as well as a little bit around the back, and that is for the wheel retainer to glue into. And I also made sure I tried to get the paint off of here, and once I get the retainer on, it should be able to snap into place. Now the only thing I haven't done is got the hubcaps ready, because I need to figure out the color of the car first. I'll try to go with green like on the box top, but what green I'm not sure. So I'll paint the hubcaps green and then add the chrome in the center once I get a chance. Now what I did to paint the wheels and tires is to just put them on these chopsticks, which seem to fit right in that hole perfectly. And then once they're dry, you can just twist it a little, like so, and pull them off. Next step is to put our wheels onto the axles. So like it says in the instructions, first glue on the wheel retainer into the wheel. Now I have scraped the paint out of here for the hubcap, which will come up later, but there's the wheel retainer. And then it says to carefully get a little bit of oil. So I've got this special oil here. A friend gave this to me. Real expensive oil. But yeah, it's supposed to help car engines. Whoops. So what I'll do here, just apply a bit of oil, like it says, onto the end of the pin here. Okay. Then carefully try to press the wheel onto the axle. Oops. Well, that's not exactly working, is it? Okay, come here. There we go. And we got a wheel that will spin around somewhat. And that's the way it goes. There, now it's starting to roll. And it won't come off, which is just what we want. So then the next step, of course, is to go all the way around and then glue the hubcap in. But I won't do that until I paint the body, because the hubcaps are supposed to match the body like it shows on the box art. So that's what I'm going to attain. And here's our finished chassis with the 327 motor in place. You can see just how nice this lines up and looks. I also have all four wheels on. Still have to put the hubcaps in, but that's okay. These wheels do rotate, although one side is quite stiff, I guess you'd say, and then the other side is really loose, which is quite odd, but at least it will roll along sort of nicely. I don't know, maybe when the oil works itself in or something like that, should be good. But yeah, I mean, looks nice. The engine sits in there nicely, looks good from underneath, and everything's nice. I did have an idea to take some of my weathered black and paint just the tops of the treads, or slicks in this case, and give it a look like the tire's been polished up, but the actual contact surface is rough, like it should be. So maybe I'll try that later on. But for now, I will get these hubcaps here ready and paint them with the body color, and then stick them into the wheels just so it looks like on the box art. Here we have our two chassis side by side, the one with the 265 Chevy blown motor in it, and the one with the 327 with the tricarbs. Which one do you like better? Let me know in the comment section down below, but you can see just how cool this ends up. Now I still have to put the radiator in on this one, but that will be body color. So anything that's body color is just left off of this frame for now. But over here you can see that I've got the chrome radiator on, and everything looks really nice. I'm turning it over. You can see the comparisons here. I don't know if I can do that with this one. There we go. Yep. And there's our oil filters underneath. And boy, it looks good all the way around. Well, I hope you enjoyed that look at me fixing up the running gear and suspension, building it in the fresh kit, as well as restoring it in the broken kit. So hopefully I did a good job. And we'll see how it all holds up once we get the body in, which will be good. And hopefully that old frame will stop breaking, because that's a huge problem. So if you enjoy these videos, don't forget to like and subscribe. Consider becoming a member. There's some cool stuff that I'm doing for members right now, making some videos that the regular subscribers will have to wait and see, as well as exclusive videos just for the members. So if you like model cars and would like to see what I have for sale, don't forget to visit us at www.monster-hobbies.ca to see what kind of model kits we have for you. So until next time, everybody, good luck on your group build, and we'll see you in the next video.